Good evening. I'm John Palm, Superintendent, Puyallup Schools, and I'm just going to wait a few minutes to get started because I know we have quite a few folks logging into the meeting this evening. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Hopefully most folks are able to join us, and some I'm sure will join us as we're in progress this evening. My name is John Palm. serve as the superintendent of the Puyallup School District. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. It's a very important topic. This is my fourth year here serving in Puyallup, my 38th year overall serving in public education. And just give you a little background on my roles. I've served as a teacher, a coach, assistant principal, and superintendent. I have extensive experience helping establish safe and secure schools. I also personally live in the community here in Puyallup. I have 6 grandkids in the school district, 3 of which are attending school at this time. So I'm going to give you a little context there and then ask Sarah to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Gillespie, the Executive Director of Communications and Public Engagement for the district. With a decade of experience in school public relations, I have a deep understanding of the importance of effective and transparent communication. This is my 4th year serving in Puyallup, and while the role can be challenging, it is also highly rewarding. So I'm honored to be part of this impactful initiatives over the last few years and part of this important discussion tonight.
Hi, I'm Gus Wessel. I'm the Director of Safety, Security, and Risk Management. I'm just passing my 90 days with the school district. However, I spent the better part of the last 2 decades working in law enforcement. The past 9 years, I was also an investigator and a school resource officer for North Idaho College in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So I really have a deep ties to the SRO group, the school safety community. And additionally, I have a family in Idaho hoping to move here soon. And they are kind of waiting as we're trying to pick out a place to live, what school to go to. And our kiddo is in 2nd grade. So a lot of different parts of life happening at once, but I'm super excited to be here in the district and very, very dedicated to this issue of safety in the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Wessel. So the community forum this evening is formatted as a Zoom webinar with a private chat feature enabled for moderators only. Throughout the evening, please submit any questions that you would like to have addressed during our panel discussion. When we get to that point in the presentation, questions received will be asked of our panel participants, and they'll answer those in real time. In addition to that, afterwards, we like to put together a question and answer publication that will go out on our website as a follow-up to the webinar. The questions will be read out loud, and a panel participant will be called upon to answer. Our agenda this evening will touch on many important topics affecting school safety. It's important to note that our district strategic plan prioritizes student and staff safety in addition to effective communications. The discussion that will take place tonight is critical to achieving our mission and ensuring the well-being of our school community. So why are we hosting the forum? Well, we all recognize the paramount importance of fostering secure and nurturing environments for our students. The forum is intended to be a response to the recent incidents and to share key information with the community. Your participation is invaluable, and we encourage you to share your questions, your insights, and ideas via the chat. Together, let us engage in a collaborative effort to strengthen our commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of every student in our care. So thank you for your active involvement in this critical conversation. So I did want to talk about, briefly, there have been 4 cases of students bringing firearms onto school campuses. There were 2 cases in our junior high schools and 2 cases in our high schools. And these were October 13th, October 18th, November 2nd, and November 8th. So in each of these incidents, the student that brought the firearm was expelled from school for no less than 365 days from school due to being in possession of a firearm on campus. And this is in compliance with Washington state law. So we all agree that any incident like this is alarming. However, in all these incidents, there's no evidence that we've found, or the police in their investigations have found, that show that there is an intent to harm or cause violence in the school. These facts don't minimize the situation, but they do tell us that our reporting and our response to intervention is working. Nonetheless, we cannot tolerate and do not tolerate such actions in our schools. So this evening, in opening this up, I wanted to convey that we absolutely understand the importance of creating a nurturing and secure and safe learning environment where everybody feels as safe as possible. We also understand the well-being of our students is at the forefront of everything we do. And we're dedicated, and I'm personally dedicated as superintendent, to provide as safe and inclusive spaces in our schools where every child will thrive academically, socially, emotionally, and in all their experiences in school. We recognize that a sense of safety is fundamental for an effective education, and we're continuously working to enhance our safety measures, working extremely closely with our local law enforcement who are engaged in the schools, as you'll find this evening, I think, in some of the discussions, quite heavily to make sure our staff are trained and ready and poised to act when needed. So I've asked our Director of Safety, Security, and Risk Management, Gus Wessel, to share some more specific information about existing security measures in our schools and our support sites. So Gus, go ahead.
So one of the things that I really want to convey before we get started is this is not something that we're doing in reaction to the events that have happened, so much as a continuation of our dedication to the safety and security of the school district. As I said, I've been here for a little over 3 months, and my position was created this past spring and filled with the intent to find someone who had the background and experience in safety and security related fields. And as such, I am new to the school district, but I bring that background. So everything that we've done, we're starting to look at, be that policies, drills, trainings, and trying to move those things forward into best practices and make sure we're doing what's best for our community. One of the things that we have done over the past year or so is worked on securing vestibules for all the schools. We have a couple more that we're finishing up. And so the way we do that creates a locked door situation. So if someone comes to our front doors, they can't get into the school unless they're allowed in by our office staff, and then they're able to identify them. The rest of our doors are to remain locked and can be locked down via a remote button if we want to remove electronic access for more people. But even in the event that nobody is addressing a certain situation, our doors remain locked. So it keeps that exterior threat out of our schools. Another thing that we do to work toward increasing that safety is we have security cameras. We have an astronomical amount across the district between all the 60 buildings that we keep functioning. And with those security cameras, while they are great for forensic situations, if someone says, hey, this happened yesterday, we're able to go back and look at those. Often that will be used on bus related situations as well. But where it comes in really handy is we have school security officers who are in the schools and able to pull those cameras up and look at them throughout their day, monitor where people are or are not, and specifically making sure people aren't in the halls, aren't in areas that they shouldn't be. So as we transition with those security officers, when they're not looking at the cameras, which is not their full-time goal, they really step into a role of liaison. They are sometimes they act as social workers. They interact with the students. They know their families. They know what's going on in their lives, if they're playing sports. And coming into the district, I didn't know what to expect. I will tell you, I was very heartened when I went to Stall Junior High for their back to school night and watched the security officer introduce himself and say hi to all the students coming in to get their schedules. Really was amazing to me to see how involved that security officer was. What I've learned is while he is an exceptional security officer, he is not the exception to our rule. All of our security officers have done a great job of being an active part of their community and in their schools. Additionally, on top of the security officers, we have patrol security officers who work nights and weekends to patrol our campuses, make sure that if someone sprays graffiti on the doors on the weekend, by the time the kids show up on Monday morning, it has been addressed, reported to law enforcement, and cleaned up. They have various other parts of their job that are involved in keeping the campus safe at night and over the weekends, but mainly just prepared for students to be able to return at the end of the weekend. And then additionally, we are very lucky to have 6 school resource officers assigned to both our schools in the Puyallup City proper, as well as the unincorporated Pierce County areas. So Pierce County supplies 3 deputies, and Puyallup City Police Department has 2 deputies and a sergeant. That is a phenomenal program. It is the best practice across the country. And really, it's interesting to see the perception of what a police officer does growing up, and then to have them in your schools and to meet them and actually interact and have conversations. We're able to really build that sense of community prior to there being an issue, prior to there being a gun on campus that you want to report. So when we do see those issues, there's a comfort and an understanding that this officer is assigned to our area. He knows us and he is a safe person to tell. So those are all things that we do daily. And then there's also the preparation side. So as we work toward emergency preparedness, we can advance the slide. Oh, we did. We start with the people. I've said this repeatedly. We have some of the best people I've ever worked with in the district. In places where there are things that I would like to, maybe get some more supports or streamline processes, I'm finding that people are making it happen. So the work is being done regardless of what that looks like. So we train the staff on how to respond to different emergencies, how to perform during drills, reunification. My experience with volcanoes prior to moving here was in 1996 when Dante's Peak was filmed. It was nearby my house. Beyond that, I have never been in an area where I had to worry about a lahar, so I'm learning about that. Some of the other things that were kind of impressive to me is our nursing staff in the schools actually take trauma care classes every year to recertify or refresh their skill set, and that comes from the Pierce County Fire Department. So they have that trauma care mindset. So if there were an issue, they are prepared. The nursing director also created trauma kits and has them in all the schools. So in the event of some sort of an incident or emergency, they have the tools immediately there to help save lives. As far as drills, we've gone through several different drills that are common with schools. As I said, my past in the schools, we did the fire alarms, the active shooter drills, lockdown drills, modified lockdown if we need to maybe block something out of the school that's not a direct threat. So if we have a law enforcement activity unrelated to the school happening outside. And then the ones that were new to me, again, the volcano, lahar, reunification was not something that we trained real heavily on in my previous jurisdiction, and earthquakes were not a concern for us as well. So it's been really great for me to learn that as well as we work through implementing those drills. And then the biggest thing for me, and it's really, really important to note that we have some reporting tools. As Dr. Palm said, we had 2 of these firearms were reported by students. That is phenomenal. I don't know many districts that have students comfortable coming up to staff, security officers and saying, hey, there's someone with a weapon. So what we're doing is working in that regard. Building those relationships has certainly paid off. In the event that someone doesn't want to report in person, we do have the anonymous tip reporting tool. It's right now at the bottom of the page of all of our websites, and it's marked "Report It" with an exclamation mark. In using that, you can activate it through either a text message, you can use an email form. It will keep you anonymous, but it actually allows for two-way conversation, which again is something that it was amazing to me. That's beyond the standard of just being able to report something. If we don't have enough information, we're able to reach back out to that person while keeping it anonymous, and get that information so we can make sure we're handling things appropriately. The other thing that I really like about that system is it goes out to a lot of people who are decision makers or key people in the district who are able to make sure we have someone working on it. I think the average time for a tip to be reported and responded to or noticed is within minutes, if not less. Certainly during the day when our emails are open, it's even quicker. So when we do get that report, we try to take a real holistic approach at dealing with these things. So we're, like I said, going to identify and figure out what that concern is, what that threat is. If we need to reach back out and get more information to appropriately address it, we will. And then see what the intervention it looks like. We take these all as they come. We try to plan on a philosophy of how to handle things. And as I said, with that holistic approach, we take all the players that need to know and we get them involved as we can, as quickly as we can, and go through those steps. In one of our situations at the junior high, we found out through social media that we had a student who didn't come home that night. At that point, it didn't really affect the school, just that we had a concern for the student. We had heard that he had made a joke or a comment about a gun at some point previously, and so we reached out to the parents, and that gun was believed to be secured in a safe. And we took the extra step of saying, hey, can you just open the safe and look and make sure it's there? When they looked, it was missing. That engaged, okay, now we're going to set some other things in place to make sure that we're safe at the school. We worked with law enforcement and the family, and we're able to safely find the kid and secure the weapon, or law enforcement was. But ultimately, each situation is going to present different challenges. And as such, we want to modify that to make sure that we're doing the best we can to keep everyone safe, to minimize the impact to the educational environment, and keep the community on board and really close that loop and have trust in us that we're doing the right thing. As I said, with that previous incident, we collaborated with the school staff and the law enforcement and the family to work through the little bits of information we had, share that, and make sure we were all coming to a safe and the right conclusion at the end. We also have connections with mental health professionals. If we get involved in threat assessments and things of that nature, we want to always bring that multidisciplinary approach. So we're getting everyone who has something to present or help that team out can bring their piece to the table, and we can staff it and figure out how to help these kids, how to help our community, and how to help our staff in the schools. When we talk about getting 4 guns out of our schools in less than a month, it's really scary to think that there were 4 guns there. It is hard to keep in mind that we are now 4 guns less. We are 4 guns out of the schools. We're that much safer. And while perception is reality, and feeling unsafe is going to negatively affect your ability to go to school, send your kids to school, come to work if you work here. I do want to convey that what we're doing is working, and it's good work from our staff. Our administrators at the school level are absolutely phenomenal. And we've been able to get through these incidents. We have been able to secure the weapons and remove that student all in a safe and expedient manner. So I do understand how scary this is as a parent myself. I do understand how scary it is to come to work and have that as a concern, but will tell you we are working to keep things going forward. We're working to continue what we've started months ago in making our schools safer, and we'll continue down that road. As far as when we get to the question portion of this, understand that there is a lot of confidentiality and privacy that comes into place. So some of the things you may want to know, we may not be able to tell you outright, but understand that we are able to share that with law enforcement. There's exemptions in FERPA and HIPAA to make those things happen. So we are making sure the right people have the information that they need to make sure your child, your community, your family is safe. That kind of leads into how we work with our communications and what we're able to release. So I'll let Sarah address that a little more.
Okay, thanks, Gus. The communications department is trained in crisis communications. And as a member of the district's crisis response team, we take the lead on family notifications, messaging, and media relations when an emergency occurs in schools. When we are notified that a school has gone into a modified or a full lockdown, families and staff at the school impacted are notified via an urgent alert sent in Parent Square, which is our mass notification system. Those urgent alerts go as a text, an email, a phone, and an app notification. One message, we have the ability of programming a message up to 300 characters, and it will send all those ways. This Parent Square system prioritizes an urgent alert within their system. So what that means is that the message goes out faster and quicker to families when we are in an emergency situation. The communications department sends inclement weather messages and crisis communications like lockdowns and that nature as urgent alerts. So lockdown messages are always sent as an urgent alert. Families and staff should receive 2 alerts. 1, when the lockdown is initiated, and 2, when the lockdown is lifted. Depending on the situation, additional information may need to be shared in school communities. And in this instance, additional messages will be sent as a post in Parent Square. If those of you on the webinar are familiar with the post feature in Parent Square, it allows for engagement with our families and our staff. So they can appreciate the post, and then they can also ask comments on the post as well, similar to like a Facebook type of platform. We're fortunate to have Parent Square as our preferred communication platform, as it directly supports the over 77 languages spoken in our homes throughout our district. So when we default to an emergency communication system, that will always be our internal broadcast system. It will not initially be a system like social media, for example. During an emergency, collaboration with law enforcement also guides our communication efforts. So depending on the situation, we may need to pace the rollout of information or be careful with the details that are publicly shared. We are careful to make sure that the public information does not ever impede an investigation into the situation. So emergency communications are typically only sent to the staff and the families at the schools that are affected. Some may wonder and question this and wonder why we don't send notifications district-wide. While we understand that it may seem counterintuitive, the reason why we only send emergency communications to those directly affected is to avoid causing unnecessary panic or concern. We want to ensure that the communication is tailored and relevant to the impacted community, rather than creating a sense of widespread alarm that could distract from the response efforts, for example. Additionally, sending notifications to an entire district can sometimes lead to information overload and desensitization, making it harder for individuals to take in and process simply all information from the district. So our goal is to provide the most relevant and actionable information to those who need it most without causing unnecessary stress or confusion. Effective communication extends also beyond the words we use. It's also about creating a consistent and cohesive visual experience in our schools. Consistent signage not only enforces rules and regulations, like reminding folks to close the doors behind them as they enter our schools, but it also reinforces a culture of safety by providing visual cues for how to report potential threats. The use of consistent signage throughout our schools and throughout our district helps communicate expectations, reinforces norms, and helps everyone just stay safe. This is something that we are committed to and have prioritized and are in the process of creating district-wide for schools and facilities, as we realize it is an area of improvement, given our recent events. So Dr. Palm, I will pass this now to you.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I want to talk a little bit about some actions, and then we'll get into the panel discussion. And I think philosophically, I wanted to share that, we as a school district, I think most school districts align with this. We believe in a holistic approach to school safety. So it does include prevention, training, and crisis management. We do not believe in a prison set up to a school. And I think it's important to state, we're not going to have lock our schools down like a prison would be. So we do work in very, very close collaboration with law enforcement. We're very fortunate. Our school resource officers, as Mr. Wessel was mentioning, they become part of the school staff and community. So they really know the kids, know the staff. They are certainly they're not necessarily there every day at every school, because we have 34 schools and 6 SROs. But we work very closely with them, and they're extremely responsive. And if they're not able to be there immediately, we can dial 911 and we can have another officer there very, very quickly in the case of an emergency. So we value that relationship, and we believe it's important. And our school board has been consistent in their dedication to that partnership. And I say that in terms of budget. They budgeted out of our local levy to support school resource officers at about $800,000 a year. So that is a strong commitment. I do also want to acknowledge we all are stressed and fearful and have anxiety when these incidents occur. I would share that the whole school year last year, we did not have an incident on campus that was brought to us that was dealt with. So that tells us that there is a spike, and we want to acknowledge that. So I definitely share those emotions, and I want to just assure everyone listening that we're deeply committed to action. We're also focused on reviewing all of our safety and security protocols, all of our policies, reviewing student staff training and strengthening those trainings. Particularly, we will be immediately adding a planned instructional lesson in our advisory or grade level assemblies in our schools, reviewing and reteaching the protocols, and also reminding students about safe reporting, including our anonymous tip reporting line. But we do want to encourage students, of course, to talk to a trusted adult first, and always report anything that they see. I know that we've got it listed on websites, but I wanted to also note our tip line. We have a phone number. It's 1-855-782-0798. Or the online through our vector alert system, which is located at puyallup-wa.safeschoolsalert.com. And then lastly, before the panel discussion, just emphasizing collective responsibility. I know that we all understand this, but gun safety begins in the home. When we talk about collective responsibility, this means when firearms are in the home, that they're secured. and that we ensure that students don't or kids don't have access to those. In addition to that, whether they're in a home, automobile, or elsewhere, firearms need to be stored in a locked and unloaded status and inaccessible to children. So, and I know that's something we all know, but it's also something to help remind our friends and neighbors, because that's often how our kids end up with access to firearms. So with that, we're right at 6:30, which is where we are targeting. So we'll have about 30 minutes. We will end at 7 sharp. So we have 30 minutes for panel discussion. So Sarah, I will pass this to you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Palm. So now it's time for our panel discussion. We've been having some activity in our chat throughout the presentation. But before we begin, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce some others on the panel with us tonight. In addition to Dr. Palm, Gus, and myself, we are fortunate to also have with us from the Puyallup Police Department, Deputy Police Chief McDonald. And I'm wondering do we have Sergeant Carusas on with us tonight? Okay, we have Sergeant Carusas, who's also a school resource officer in our schools. And from the Pierce County Sheriff Department, we have Deputy Capetto. So thank you. I thank all of you for being with us tonight and available to answer some questions. So I'm going to get started with some questions that we've addressed in some other channels, just that seem to be a common theme or a common occurrence. So Dr. Palm, I'm going to have you start and address this question. How is the school district allocating resources to support these school safety initiatives? So how are we prioritizing this in our schools?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. That is absolutely, it's priority. Starting off with our budgeting process, I mentioned earlier, our school board is committed to, they approve our budget annually, and they're committed to make sure that we have line item to support. Initially, I mentioned school resource officers. So that's something we go into contract with both Pierce County and with the Puyallup Police Department to ensure that we have those positions, and those are for the school year. And in addition to that, you know, we absolutely have invested capital funds in entry vestibules in our schools that did not have them. There were 14 elementaries that needed to have secure entries. And as we know, that allows us to not allow a visitor that comes in the front door to have immediate access to hallways and gyms and other parts of the school. They have to go into the office first. Before that, of course, we have a buzz-in system that Gus had mentioned as well. Those all cost, you know, those are part of our budgeting process that we make sure that those are in our schools. Cameras, we mentioned, there's intercom warning systems. We've got radios that our staff have on hand at all times. And we have security staff in our buildings as well. And then training, which includes, one thing people may not understand is when we do our drills and other trainings, those actually are, if not run completely by our police partners, they are viewed and critiqued by our police partners. And so that's, again, part of that training. Of course, our administrators get the bulk of that. But I think that, I mean, I could go on and list a lot of items, but it's definitely a priority in our school district. We have a long ways to go. We absolutely have a lot of investments we need to continue to make, and perhaps as things move forward, we may consider some safety solutions that we haven't currently put into place as we see the need.
Thanks, Dr. Palm. That's a good segue into staff training, because this particular question, and Gus, I'm going to have you address this one, is asking how are school staff trained to respond to threats of violence. Can you address that one, Gus?
Yeah, so generally speaking, it depends on your role as a staff member, certainly. So if you are security or if you're the school resource officer, you are the person going directly at that threat. But ultimately, our goals are to train the staff members to protect and kind of isolate, get our kids away from that threat, lock the doors, kind of all those standard things that are best practices for active shooters or any incident like that. The biggest thing for me, and that I'm wanting to convey as we go through a lot of these policies and trainings, we are updating them as as makes sense. But I'm trying to work on training a philosophy rather than a plan. So if you plan for 5 years that this is what you're going to do in this specific classroom as a staff member, and you are moved to another class, I don't want your mindset to be tougher to get through because you're now in a different area. Um, if we can train on a philosophy like the run, hide, fight, we can then push that out. And I don't care if you're at Costco on the way home, that philosophy will still be sound. Um, Something else that we do for the schools is we work with a countywide group, and that is all the law enforcement and all the schools work together to come up with a standard. And so when we have a response by law enforcement, they should be responding the same way across the county. When we have training, whether it's the run, hide, fight, some of the trauma care training, things like that, it is uniformed across the district. And so it ensures that we're really following best practice and keeping up to date with what we need as the community changes.
Okay, thank you, Gus. This question is more so asking about safety just in general throughout the community. So Deputy Chief McDonald, I'm going to have you address this question. How does the police department work with schools and other community partners to address these public safety issues in the area?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invite to sit on this, Dr. Paul. I appreciate our inclusion in this the safety summit. And just as a way of introduction, I've been a Puyallup police officer for 34 years, and 11 of those years as the deputy police chief here. The chief would be here tonight if he wasn't tied away or otherwise occupied at a city council meeting. And I have 3 adult children that all are successful graduates of Puyallup schools. So, and a lot of us here, the men and women of the Puyallup Police Department and the Pierce County Sheriff's Office, are parents of students in the district. So we're definitely stakeholders. Our mission is to work in partnership with the community to reduce crime and the fear of crime. That's our mission with the police department. And one of our biggest partners is the school district. You know, when kids are in school, you know, it's incumbent upon the schools and the police to keep them safe. So it's a huge shared interest between ourselves at the police department and the school district people to, you know, do whatever we can to improve, increase, maintain safety. So I'm a big proponent of the school resource officer program. Having officers in schools is not just to you know, deal with crime. That's a minor part of it. It's to foster relationships. It's to build trust with students. It's to mentor students. We all remember, I mean, there's people in the 30s and 40s that remember their DARE officer, and that was their favorite officer, and that really had an impact on their life. We don't have DARE programs anymore, but we have school resource officers, and everyone definitely knows the school resource officer at their school, even into their, when they become parents, they still remember that. And we're real proud of speaking for the 3 Puyallup SROs. These aren't like brand new officers out of the academy that we put in the schools. These are very seasoned officers. They've had a number of years as patrol detectives, SWAT assignments. They want to be in the schools. They're really good at it. So we're really thankful for their investment in the kids in our community. And getting back to part of your question about crime in general, yeah, we're in a tough time in the United States and in Washington State, Western Washington. Violent crime is up. We're all concerned about it. We're doing the best we can to work within the laws in the state of Washington to put bad guys in jail and to keep people safe. We're always invested in justice for victims, and that's what one of the things that drives us. So, and one of the things we do about schools, yeah, you'll see our traffic unit that's in school safety zones very often, proactive patrols around the schools. And all this does have a positive impact on safety. Our officers are there, visible deterrence against criminal behavior, with patrol marked cars, with officers in the schools. motorcycle traffic officers working all the elementary schools, the school speed zones. So our presence there and our quick response time to problem in the schools is something that we're proud of.
Great, thank you, Deputy Chief. Lots of questions coming in about our school resource officers in particular, and really bringing it home to our recent cases in schools. I'm going to ask Sergeant Carusis to address this question first, and then perhaps Deputy Capetto can follow it up. But this question is really asking about what school resource officers specifically do when a gun is brought to school.
Hello, thank you for having me here on this panel. A little bit about me. I've been a sergeant for just about 3 years now. I've been a police officer for nearly 22 years. And this is my third year as a school resource sergeant. So a little bit about the question there. So if a gun is reported at school, the first thing we want to do is obviously respond to the school if we're not already there. And then once we're there, depending on the situation, we would put the school in lockdown. And then from there, we would immediately go to that student and make sure that student is detained and that firearm is removed from that student.
Thank you. Deputy Capetto, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I want to add to, I think a lot of the questions are what we're doing to be preventative prior to the school year starting. This is my third year with the school district. I created a lot of videos for the students and did educational videos, which tremendously helped educate the students on kind of the rules and policies of the school, not to get in trouble. It also built relationships with the students and allowed the students to have more open conversation. For myself, I peruse all of the social media accounts with students. I have a lot of fake accounts that I use to keep in contact with what programs they're using. And so I can catch a lot of unnecessary conversations that are going on before they happen. If I get any tips or reports that there's a weapon in the schools, we address those that evening. I've been up late at night, all through the night, addressing threats at some points. And we don't allow the schools to continue if we feel there's a threat to the school. But all of our calls have been handled appropriately and quickly. And we do a lot of proactive work so that we're not so reactive in these situations. But as the panel has reported, our high crimes are up, and we're doing the best we can to respond quickly and efficiently.
And I could add a little bit to that if I could. And then one important asset with all this whole thing is that all the SROs, myself included, we're very tightly embedded with the school staff and with the students. We're out and about. And so numerous times I've had students and staff contact me with concerns of safety, not just possible guns, but fighting that may occur. And so it's all about building that trust and being there on a daily basis. And then obviously communication with the SROs, the staff and students. That's the bedrock of what SROs do. And that's why we've had such success of getting the firearms out of school in such a quick, safe manner.
Thank you, Sergeant Carusis and Deputy Capetto. Okay, these next questions are really focused around the buildings in particular. Gus, I think I'm going to have you address these particular questions with regards to additional cameras at schools and even metal detectors. Are metal detectors something that the school district would ever consider? And perhaps, Gus, when you're done, we could have Dr. Palm chime in as well. So.
Yeah, so, and I've seen a lot of questions that kind of have surrounded some of these topics. And the fact that we have so many schools, camera-wise, it is a system that I'm working on with some of our staff and facilities to look at what the next option would be, making them more accessible, cloud-based, something that we could pull up more readily. One thing that shocked me is we pay about $70,000 a year in licensure alone for those cameras. So I had no idea how many cameras we had actively going on at any given point across the district. As far as metal detectors, there are a lot of different options. And we're really not taking anything off the table at this point. And so, as I said earlier, this is a process that is not happening because of what happened in the last couple of weeks. This is what we've been planning to do and continuing to do. So I am looking at those options to bring forth to Dr. Palm, depending what appears to be feasible, reasonable. As he said, we're not necessarily trying to create a full prison environment, but we also have to work within the laws. But we have some expectations from the community as well that we need to uphold. So we are actively looking at what options are available and what that looks like.
And I guess I would just add to that is absolutely nothing off the table. We're I think one of the things we want to continue to do is assess all of our school sites and all of our support sites, affirm that we have adequate and capable video camera systems that are present and they don't have a lot of holes in their viewing areas and things of that nature. So we run into that periodically, but also so that they're practical and can be used quickly and when needed. In addition, even they're a deterrent too. I guess is the other thing about cameras. We do feel like they're a deterrent. The other question around metal detectors, yeah, that's a huge issue as far as the scope. Keep in mind, I think folks would probably love to have a one-on-one conversation with Gus about all these different things. But we have 34 schools and about 23,000 students. We're serving about 144,000 people in our community. So just the scope of what we're doing as a district is pretty broad. And so when we talk about something like metal detectors, we need to think about that district-wide and understand that at this point, some of the challenges there are around our portables that are most of our schools, because we are not in a situation where all of our schools are in one footprint where they're self-contained and you can easily provide a single point entry. So those are some of the big facility challenges that are at play. I think what we'll be obviously considering is other ways as well of looking at personnel and ways that we make assignments of different safety personnel around the district where we feel like the needs are highest. So again, nothing's off the table. We want to make sure and address where the needs are. And I think that we're happy to have Gus on board with his expertise to help us walk through that.
Thank you, Dr. Palm. This next question, in fact, we've received a few questions really asking what is punishable by law when kids do bring guns to school. So Deputy Chief, I'm going to have you first address this question. Specifically, this individual is asking, why aren't the gun owners being charged? Where are these kids getting the guns?
The gun ownership is paramount, and the legislature in Washington State did pass a law in 2019 to increase the responsibility, or at least the accountability of the gun owner. So in these 4 instances, it could be that they got the gun from home, from the parents, right? Or it could also be that they got the gun from a friend, or they stole it from somewhere and the kids had no idea where that gun, or I'm sorry, the parents didn't know where the gun came from. So, but assuming that this is a family gun, the parents own a gun, they have certain responsibilities under the law now, so that if a gun falls into the wrong hands, specifically a minor in this case, because anyone under 21 can't possess a handgun, and that gun is used to harm someone, that's now a felony. That crime in Washington is called community endangerment. If that gun is used and the parents, and this is when they did not store it properly, they didn't have it in a safe or a gun lock. There's no requirement by law that you keep a gun locked up in your home, but if you don't secure it responsibly, and that gun is used in a crime, you can be held accountable. And say if the gun is used, taken from a gun owner and then used, it's a lesser crime, gross misdemeanor if that gun is used to intimidate, display in public, or some other thing like that. So it is a felony to harm someone with a gun. And that would be the parents, potentially the gun owner, getting charged with the crime. So that's a new law in Washington State. So there's an increase in holding gun owners accountable for what happens with their gun when they are irresponsible with how they store it.
And just kind of a personal soapbox for me from my law enforcement career. If you have a concealed weapons permit and you're carrying your gun, please do not leave it in your car. Cars are getting broken into every day. Cars are getting stolen. It is the least safe place. And I know that I have had experiences personally in my life where we have found guns and have had guns pointed at us that came out of vehicles. And then the other side is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, if you are a parent and you own guns, I just want to implore you to not only have the conversations with your kids, but check on those, make sure that they're where they're supposed to be. I know that we don't think our kids know necessarily our code to our safe or where the keys are, but I will tell you, my child at probably 2 figured out how to unlock my phone. And I've not been able to hide a piece of candy in my house for at least 2 or 3 years. So if kids are looking for these things, they can find them. So just check on your guns, make sure they're where they should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Yeah, I think a couple questions have come through really with concern about the students that are being expelled from school. And I think this is a law enforcement question, and maybe if we can add some school district or school district response to this as well. But the students that are being expelled from school, are they having real life consequences for their actions? And what are we doing to get those students back into school after they've kind of served their time? So Deputy Chief, why don't you start first, and then we can have Dr. Palm follow up.
Yeah, as far as holding students accountable that break the law, bring a gun to school, yeah, they're definitely arrested. And depending on their age, of course, 18 and over, there's plenty of high school students that are 18 and over, that's an adult crime, and they're going to go to adult jail. In some incidents, they're under 18, so they are arrested and booked into Raymond Hall, the juvenile justice jail in Pierce County. And at that point, it's up to the prosecutors and the judge to determine their release conditions, if they're going to be released before trial, if they're 17 and a half, are they going to be charged as an adult? So there's a case-by-case basis on those situations. But yeah, it's considered a very serious crime when you have a gun at a school by the police, and we are going to do everything we can to put that person into custody, arrest them, hold them accountable, and then it's in the hands of the prosecutors and the judges based on potential offender scoring, criminal history, as far as the length of confinement in a juvenile jail or an adult jail if they're remanded to adult status.
Yeah, and educationally, I think the follow-up you mentioned, Sarah, was what happens like from an educational standpoint. So that would also depend. So if they're long-term in Raymond Hall, there's educational services that would be provided in that setting by a contracted educational service agency that's contracted with them. In addition to that, if a student were released but not able to go to school, we do have virtual online programming that a student could access without being on campus. So that could be a possibility. Another consideration would be if the student didn't happen to live in the school district and was choicing into the district, their choice would be revoked and they would be then kind of back to their home district for educational services. So it's a kind of a range, and of course it depends on each case. And if the student has any identified disability that would need to be taken into consideration as well. So.
Yeah, and Dr. Palm, I'm going to kind of keep you on the ready for this question as well. It really focuses on what we do to create positive climates in our schools. So this particular question says, what are your post-event strategies to ensure the remaining non-expelled students are not experiencing heightened anxiety and not experiencing school avoidance?
Well, that's a big question. You know, this was 4 different schools, and I think we all know 3 of them are in Pierce County. So Baloo Junior High, Glacier View Junior High, Emerald Ridge, and Puyallup High School. So in each of those cases, there'll be an immediate staff meeting where they, I guess you would call it an after event debriefing that the staff would take part in. And then with that, there's a, I guess, assessment within the staff about what the impact, depending on what all happened and how many people were impacted by the situation, there would be counseling services accessible for kids. Sometimes we'll dispatch a crisis team, which means additional staff, additional counselors from other schools that come into the school setting, and then provide space for students to debrief, to have support, and then basically process what took place. I don't think it doesn't happen overnight. So sometimes that needs to take place over several days. Some students, again, would be possibly more highly impacted, certainly if they were personally involved in the situation and or threatened. But at the same time, anybody can experience anxiety and stress after an event like this. So beyond that, we do have an employee assistance program for our employees that's available, and we pay for that for all employees. It's free to them. So that also is a phone call away where they can receive free counseling support. And then for students, similarly, we have on-campus support, social workers that can be a support as well to students. So I hope that answered the question there, sir.
Yeah, it does. This question still talks about student supports. So Gus, I'm going to have you address this one because I think it gets a little bit into a threat assessment type of thing. This particular question is, how are students who may pose a threat to themselves or others supported and monitored?
Yeah, so whether it's a threat to themselves or others, suicidal ideations, if we've got other concerns like that, we kind of treat it the same way in that we use that multidisciplinary team. We take all the stakeholders that we have that we can say, all right, law enforcement, what resources do you have? Who that positive contact for the school may be, if it's the coach, a teacher, a custodial worker, may be a great pro-social contact to keep that student engaged. We have the ability to set up work with our internal, like our school counselors and social workers. In the event there's a threat or a concern or a resource need that is greater than we can handle at the building or school district level, part of that work group with the other law enforcement agencies in the county, we're also able to do a threat assessment level 2 team, which would engage more community-based resources to help marshal those as needed. Ultimately, once we get a concern, whatever that looks like, we find all the people that we have access to that have resources to help that concern, to make that decision, whatever that looks like, and make the best decision for that instance. And then obviously we also follow up after the fact. So if it's a student who's got some self-harm issues, we have various different systems that will alert us if someone is searching for something on their computer that is concerning, if there's someone reporting it. But again, it all comes down to building that relationship, having the ability to either report it to your counselor, report it to your SRO, and then being able to have us reach out and try to work with that person and the family and whatever mental health help we can muster to make sure that they are doing better and moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Gus. I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to ask our deputy chief to address the last question of the evening. So this one is asking if there's any reflection on the timing of these incidents happening so close together.
As far as I know, there's no connection between these 4, so the timing is coincidental. But we are at a time where juvenile crime is on the rise. I've seen several of the questions here wanting to know specifically about Puyallup High School case, about the parents' knowledge of the gun. Well, the parents in this case didn't know anything about that gun. They don't possess a gun. It wasn't their gun. So where do we find out where the gun is? We'd talk to the kid traditionally in police work. But we can't do that anymore. In Washington state law, we're prevented from interviewing minors without express approval by the youth access to counsel line. And so basically there's the new law in Washington state that doesn't allow police to interview minors that are under arrest for a crime. So we're kind of handcuffed a bit by investigating this to find out where that gun came from. So we have to use other methods. We're trying to find where that gun came from, of course, and I'm sure Pierce County is doing the same on the 3 incidents that did not occur in the city. So that's my reflection on that situation.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. I'm going to hand this back over to Dr. Palm. Just let everyone know that we will be compiling all the questions received in the chat this evening and publishing them on our district website. So.
Well, thanks, Sarah. And I know we're out of time. I know that a lot of the questions people have will be site specific and they want to know, about the school their child goes to. That's normal. We didn't address those in a granular way here, obviously, because we don't have all of our school administrators on the panel. But I would say that, they're prepared at any point to respond to questions if you want to email school principals with additional specific follow-ups to their site. However, any other questions that you want to send in, we'll be happy to respond to. And again, we're going to put together a Q&A from tonight. So I just want to thank you, Sarah, for moderating, and also for all the panelists for your participation, expertise. We thank our local law enforcement officers for being here. We know that you've got other things to do tonight. It's involved working or out on your day off. We appreciate you helping us out this evening. And but we all want to welcome everyone's ongoing feedback and just encourage you to scan the QR code that you're going to see on the screen to provide feedback on the event, share additional questions or concerns as it relates to school safety. This is a beginning of a ongoing dialogue. So we're eager and we're leaning into this issue. So we're leaning into safety and security. We know it's important, obviously been spiked by these incidents, but we also hope you'll stay involved as we continue to explore ways to work together and move forward together. So thank you again for attending. Have a good evening.